The first question is from Abhilash Sri Kumar from Lyon in France. Swamiji, my question is on Maya's ontological status. Compared to Atman, mind is only apparently real, a result of superimposition. It is then the product and not the locus of ignorance. Further, ignorance can't exist in the self because they're polar opposites. Mixing them is again due to adhyasa. I feel there is infinite regress or circular reasoning here. Should we view avidya and Maya as a second independent entity coexisting with Brahman?
Okay, that's a difficult one. It's one of those subtle philosophical questions, metaphysical questions. What he wants to ask, it's a well-known conundrum in the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. It's called the locus of ignorance. The locus of ignorance or the locus of Maya. Maya, Ajnana Adhishthana, Avidya Adhishthana. In Sanskrit it will be called. What it means is simply this. In Advaita Vedanta we assert that you are Brahman itself, limitless existence, consciousness, bliss. And the reason, and all the problem is because we do not know this. Once we realize this, then from our perspective, from the perspective of Brahman, from existence, consciousness, bliss, there's really no problem at all. But then this all is predicated on, it hinges on one thing, this so-called ignorance of our real self. Now a question is asked, and we also come to this question, if you think about it a little bit, after some time you'll get this question. All right, so ignorance is the problem. Call it Maya, there are other Sanskrit terms, Ajnana, which means ignorance, Avidya, which means the opposite of knowledge, which is ignorance, and so on. A question might come, where or whose is this ignorance? If all that exists really is Brahman, and then where is this ignorance? The ignorance can't be in Brahman. If Brahman is, compare it to the sun. There can't be darkness in the sun. The answer would be, no, ignorance is in us sentient beings. We don't know our real nature, so ignorance is in us. Like all ignorance. I don't know maybe German, or I don't know Sanskrit, and my ignorance of Sanskrit, ignorance of German is in me. But then that doesn't make sense either. I, the sentient being, I come after ignorance. You see, it's only because I do not know myself as Brahman, that's why I am as this being, as this limited being. After all, you are asserting that I am Brahman, I don't know myself, that's why I am in this condition as a limited sentient being going through birth and death and suffering and all of that. Therefore, ignorance must have come before me. We catch this, then only the question will make sense. Ignorance, I'm still talking about the question. We're making sense of the question. Ignorance has to come before I become a sentient being. I'm Brahman. Everything is fine. And then somehow maybe the ignorance has come, and then I have somehow lost track of my real nature, and I think, just like a dream, for example. So you fall asleep, and then you are a person in the dream, going through nightmare, suffering, and all of that. But for that to happen, there must be a waker who has fallen asleep. So the sleep must come before the person in the dream. The dream arises only after sleep has come. You can't say that the person in the dream is sleeping. I mean, the character in the dream. Character in the dream exists only because the waker has fallen asleep. So ignorance cannot exist in me. I am a product, the individual being, I'm a product of the ignorance. How can ignorance exist in me? It's circular reasoning, as he says. So the question is, where does ignorance exist? Because it can't exist in Brahman. The ultimate reality, it's supposed to be free of all problems. How can it have ignorance? And it cannot exist in this individual being, sentient beings like us. We have ignorance about things in the world. We have lots of ignorance. But this primal ignorance about our real nature as Brahman cannot essentially be in me. It's prior to me. Surely it is in me, but it must be prior to me. Surely I do not know I am Brahman. I am unenlightened. I freely admit it. But this lack of enlightenment, this covering, this veiling, this Maya must be there before I become this miserable creature. So otherwise, it's as he says, it's like circular reasoning. Chicken or egg problem, which came first? Seed or the plant problem, which came first? So, what's the answer? The alternative he suggested is, shall we then accept that there is Brahman and there is a power called ignorance separately existing? No, that won't work either. That will lead to dualism, which is anathema to the non-dualist, that are two separate existences, two things. And then the whole of non-duality will fall apart. By knowledge, you get enlightenment. But if there is a separate power which veils Brahman, then knowledge of Brahman won't help you. The veiling will still work. Okay. So, what's the answer? Where is ignorance? Two answers here. I'll give you the real answer and then the more commonly accepted answers in Vedanta philosophy, Advaita Vedanta. The real answer, to which we owe to Sureshwara, one of the great disciples of Shankaracharya, he said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Why? Because the question itself is not a correct question. Where is ignorance? The answer is, it isn't. There is no such thing, no such reality called ignorance. But we are in ignorance, we are seeing the effects of it. No. Whatever is dispelled by knowledge never existed in the first place. Whatever you find by knowledge was already there. I have lost some people say, I've lost my glasses, and the glasses are right on the bridge of your nose. I've lost my glasses and looking all over and so what you have lost by ignorance, you don't know it's right there. You really haven't lost it. It's there. And what you find by knowledge, you don't have to do anything. Suddenly I realize it's there. And it's lo and behold, it's there. That was never lost in the first place. So ignorance is, I'm making a philosophical point here. Ignorance is not a reality. It's not what philosophers would call, doesn't have an ultimate ontological status. That's a fancy way of saying it's not ultimately real. You can take it as practically real because that's what we are trying to overcome in this world. But ultimately, when you are enlightened, you will see that there never was something like ignorance. So this is the actual answer. It's not a question that we should be bothered with. Proof of this also is, look at the enlightened ones, whomever you called enlightened in the non-dual tradition, whoever. None of them ever looked back upon their state in ignorance and said, I wonder where that came from. I mean, I am enlightened now. I am Brahman. I'm free. It's all done. It's worked. But that thing which was there, where did that come from? That's one mystery that still remains. I have to give an answer. Where was ignorance? No, it's not a question for them at all. It's not a real question. It comes up because the mind wants to know. Okay. What's the traditional answer which is given, which is accepted if you go to a classical Advaita Vedanta Pandit? He'll give you one of two answers. The two possibilities. Ignorance is in Brahman and ignorance is in the individual being. First, ignorance is an individual being. Who says this? This is said by one sub-school of Advaita Vedanta called the Bhamati tradition. A great master called Vachaspati Mishra, about 1,000 years ago. He wrote this major commentary on Shankara's commentary on the Brahma Sutras called the Bhamati, and which propounded this theory that ignorance is in us. But doesn't that lead to circular reasoning? He says no. Because the ignorance which is because of which we are here today, it's something that was there in the past life. And that led to this present life and this present ignorant existence. And when you get enlightenment, when you get knowledge, that ignorance is destroyed. It's dispelled. And you realize you are Brahman. Where did that ignorance come from? The past life. It's not circular. But it's not circular like he asks. So it's a very well thought out question. If it's not circular reasoning, it's infinite regress. Because the question will be, in the past life, where did that ignorance come from? Which was there earlier, because of which we are here now. We didn't know who we were in our past life, and we went on doing stuff and generated karma, and as a result of which we have been born in this life. So that ignorant existence, unenlightened existence in the past life is the cause of this present life. That is very standard karma theory. But then you'll ask the question, where did that ignorance come from? And the answer is, came from the life before that. But where did the first ignorance come from? And the answer there will be, it didn't. There is no beginning. It's called anadi, beginningless. So that's a cop-out. You are avoiding the question. How can it be beginningless? You're just avoiding the charge of infinite regress. In Sanskrit, it is called anavastha dosha, reasoning without foundation. You're trying to find a foundation, a beginning, and you can't find a beginning. You say it's beginningless. How can it be beginningless? But this was explained to us very nicely by a professor of philosophy, J.N. Mahanti, who passed away a couple of years ago. Master of both Eastern and Western thought. He was a master of Nyaya school, of Advaita Vedanta, and in the West, he studied Husserl's phenomenology. Those who have read philosophy, they know. He studied it in Germany, in Göttingen. So he told us that the same thing, ignorance is beginningless. How? He said, actually, every ignorance is beginningless. And I remember he asked us this question. So this was in Calcutta. How many of you know German? None of us. We said, we don't know German. So you don't know German? We said, no, we don't. And since when do you not know German? Oh, from our birth. And he says, oh, so before your birth you knew German? No. It's beginningless, isn't it? The ignorance about anything, about German, about anything is beginningless. And it comes to an end when you pick up your first German book. When you start learning German, starts to dispel the veil of ignorance. So any kind of ignorance actually is beginningless. And it comes to an end when knowledge is generated. So that's the theory of Vachaspati Mishra, traditional theory. It seems to cleverly avoid both infinite regress and circular reasoning. That's one. The other classical theory is, no, ignorance, Maya, is in Brahman. Really, how can darkness be in Brahman? Ignorance is an imperfection. Ignorance is a problem. How can that be in your ultimate perfect reality, non-dual Brahman? Well, for Brahman, it isn't a problem. It's a power. Its effect upon us is veiling of the real nature of Brahman and projecting this entire universe. So for us, it's a problem. For Brahman, it's not a problem. For Brahman, it's a power. It's the power of Brahman by which it manifests this entire universe. So that's against standard Advaita Vedanta. So that's when Brahman becomes the god of religion. Brahman plus this power is the god of religion, which projects this entire universe and all of us and so on and so forth. So these two answers. Where is ignorance? That's the question. The first answer, the real answer is, of course, it doesn't matter because it's not a real question. From the perspective of the enlightened one. It's a very real question for philosophers. And again, it's not a real question for the most of us because we are not thinking in that way. It's a question if you think about it. Who thinks about it? The philosopher. Not the man not the common man, not the enlightened man. Not the enlightened person. It's the in-between. The person who's trying to understand the whole thing says we can't understand it. Precisely. And the two answers from classical Vedanta schools. The answer that it is in the sentient being and it avoids both circular reasoning and infinite regress from Vachaspati Mishra. So this is called the Bhamati school answer. And the other one is, no, it's a power of Brahman. That is what the school is called, Padmapada school, it's called the Vivarana school, just for those who want to know. And its effect on us is ignorance, but the power is Maya. It's a power of Brahman, power of God. The way the monks in the Himalayas have explained it, traditionally if you ask a monk, they are a non-dualist monk, what they'll say is, of course it doesn't make sense. When you say that it leads to the problem of infinite regress or circular reasoning, that's a fancy way, a logician's way of saying it doesn't make sense. Of course it doesn't make sense. If it did make sense, then Maya or ignorance would be real. It's a paradox. It has to be paradoxical. If you push hard enough, you'll end up with the paradox. Because ultimately, from an Advaita Vedanta perspective, only Brahman is real. You are Brahman and that's the reality. If all of this made sense, then it would probably be a real thing. And then Advaita, non-duality wouldn't be real. Does that strike something? In a dream, if at any point we come across the illogicality of the dream and we ask somebody in the dream, this doesn't make sense. Is it a dream? Am I dreaming? Could be. And often you tend to wake up from a dream. And the answer would be, yes, it doesn't make sense because it is a dream. It is a dream. That's why it doesn't make sense. I was reading this, and this universe doesn't make sense. Not just to us, but to the deepest investigators of our modern times. I was reading this book by Carlo Rovelli on quantum mechanics. He's an Italian quantum physicist, a cutting-edge physicist, but also a beautiful writer, a very evocative writer. So he describes our theories of the universe in classical mechanics. This whole physics describes universe at its most fundamental level as these vast empty spaces conditioned by general relativity, by gravity, and these tiny particles pushed around by forces racing through this universe and constituting planets and stars and living beings and so on. And then he says, after a very evocative description, that's the fundamental nature of reality. And then he says, except it's not true. And that's what last 100 years, nearly, quantum mechanics is supposed to be showing us. I'm no expert at all on that, not even close. I've just read some popular books. But these are books written by actual practicing scientists and very, very and deep thinkers. And they're saying, none of this is actually true. And that's what he tries to say there is, this is because we are conditioned to think of reality as constituted of things. That there are cats and dogs and stars and planets and human beings and chairs and tables. He said, except at the quantum level, there are no things. And his understanding of quantum mechanics, there are multiple understandings. But his understanding of quantum mechanics is things are only the way they interact with each other. So something becomes a thing with properties only when it's interacting with another so-called quote-unquote thing. It's only the way reality talks to itself that appears as things and properties. It's very difficult to get your mind around such things. But when I read that, the only thing that jumps out of the pages of the book to me again and again is it screams Maya. That's what the ancients were talking about when they talked about Maya. I mentioned how the Holy Mother, she said, Jamon bhav temni labh, a conversation with one of her monastic disciples, Swami Sarvapriyananda. In Bengali, Jamon bhav temni labh. It means, as your attitude, the way you practice, that kind of realization you will get. So that means, suppose you worship, so it's Shivaratri is coming, you worship God as Shiva. And you're likely to have an experience of God as Shiva when you get a mystical experience. So the monk whom she was talking to protested. He said, that's just like a dream. I mean, you think about something a lot, it's going to come up in your dreams, likely to. So if you are going to practice this way, meditate and chant and worship Shiva, and then you say, because of that you get an experience of God as Shiva, that means it's like an hallucination or a dream. You've just stuffed your mind with that thought and that's coming up. It's just a dream. Her answer was very interesting. She didn't try to persuade him otherwise. She said, of course it's a dream. What else is it except not a dream? This is a dream. This is all a dream. And then she pointed a finger and swept it across what she was seeing. And the Swami writes in his memoirs, within brackets, Jagrat Avastha, our waking world, was what we consider to be real. She is pointing it out. This is a dream. Then he protests. He says, no, but this is not a dream. Because this persists. Dreams come and go. There's so many dreams every night. This persists. And he says, maybe it has persisted over many lifetimes. How can this be a dream? And again, she doesn't try to convince him. She says in Bengali, Ta holeiba, shapno boito noy. Let that be so. It's nothing more than a dream. It's nothing more than a dream. That's what leads to those paradoxes. I remember this book by John Barrows. He's a mathematical philosopher, mathematical physicist. He came here. There's a new school here. I heard him speak on unknowability. There. So he has got this book called Impossibility. And he says there that any field, in every field we feel that if you advance far enough, physics, mathematics, biology, whatever, the feeling was you will complete the field. You'll get a full, deep understanding. And yet what we are seeing in just about every fundamental field of study in science is you're ending up with paradoxes, incompletenesses. Whether it's mathematics, Gödel's famous, he was right here in the Institute of Advanced Studies in Princeton, famous incompleteness theorems. Or in physics, you have what is that called? So Einstein's relativity, then this uncertainty of the mass and position of the particles. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So just look at these terms: relativity, uncertainty, incompleteness. Just the terms themselves. I'm not going into the depths because I have no competence there. So every field of study, instead of being completed, as we go deeper and get a better, more sophisticated understanding, it's not solving the mystery. It's not giving completeness as yet, at least. It's just showing, throwing up paradoxes. Okay.